Recording in progress. Okay, so tonight we're going to go over some side control stuff. Obviously, Richie went over knee on belly and then into, sorry. Bother me. Richie went over knee on belly and then transitioning into baseball bat choke. And it sort of made me think a bit about side control in MMA and that you don't see knee on belly particularly that much. I guess you probably don't see it a massive amount in jiu-jitsu tournaments either, but certainly within mixed martial arts, it's a pretty rare position to see. So I went and did a little bit of digging and went and looked at some pretty obvious places where I was expecting to see it. And then the other thing that I started to think about was, I guess, how I could tie in some of the discussions I've tried to have with you about thinking of like side control or mount or back as a theme or like a position with many sub positions within it. And so what I've tried to do tonight is take a snippet of a fight, just sort of the three positions that work through, or the three moments that work through side control, and get them to demonstrate, or use them to demonstrate to you how the position is side control in its kind of overarch, but then when you actually look at it, there's a lot of sort of movement within that single position. And I think that should help you understand what is meant by like, oh, the position's dynamic or it's side control, but then people are starting to list off all these other sort of side control positions. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to try doing something first, which may or may not be successful. So here we go. Click. So what I'm going to try to do is share with you. Wait. I'm going to try. This was literally working every single time I practiced it, and now it's not. It's amazing. Oh, you bastard. That is very annoying. Sorry, I'm just trying to share something. Here we go. I got it.
Can you see me?
Hey, Trav. Oh, yeah. Hey, Trav.
Hey, buddy. Who's on? I can't see shit.
Greg and his family and Dane.
Whoop. Sorry.
Nailed it. Let me try this one more time. I literally practiced this about 3 times and was like, yeah, that works perfectly. And right, I did it. Yes. Okay, you should all be looking at what can only be described as an amazing drawing of a person. Yeah? Anyone give me a thumbs up or something on that? Yeah, thank you. Nice, nailed it. Perfect. Okay, so what you can probably see is that this is a head. These are kind of arms. Here's a set of hips over here, legs. And then this would be the sort of trunk of the person. I'll just bring it over here a tiny bit. So it's walking into the microphone. Here's the trunk of the person. And then the hashed line down the middle is the spine. So we're going to talk really quickly about side control, right? So let me just change a bit of color here. This is, as Trav indicated, that he liked the fact that I was using drawing. So I've doubled down on my drawing now. So, okay, side control is, a point where we've crossed the hips, right? So once we're past the hips and we're onto the side of them, we're going to consider that side control. So what that means is, the risk in side control is that their legs are able to come back between their hips and us. The legs are able to get back between us and them, but really we're interested in kind of this space through here. So if we're under the armpits and between the legs, then we're into side control. One way to think about it would be to think in terms of like underhooks, as underhooks kind of occupying the space between the trunk and the limb, right? So you can imagine like, here's an underhook, space between the trunk and the limb would be here and here. There's not a really like widely accepted definition of something that's occurring down at the hips, but for the purpose of what we're talking about, if we can separate a limb from a trunk, or one of their limbs from their trunk that gives us a point of control. So when you're looking at side control, you're trying to control the box. Yeah, you're trying to control the four corners of the box, because what they are trying to do is potentially like rotate in towards you or rotate away from you. And if they can do either of those things, they can get onto their side, facing you, facing away from you, and that leads them into escapes. And over the last couple of weeks, we've talked about, like in a mixed martial arts context, that one of the common escapes you see is people turtling up and then building onto their hands and knees to stand up. You see turtling as an option in jiu-jitsu tournaments as well, where, you know, as someone's passing past the legs and getting into side control, the opponent will turtle to try and protect, you know, this space in here. Equally, you know, the classic thing that we teach at the start of your skill development is, hey, if someone, you know, passes to your side, what we want you to do is rotate to face them so that you can bring your knees up in between you and them and stop them from sort of, you know, getting into this space here. So really sort of brief conceptual overview of side control. But what I want you to understand from all that is that when you're inside, your job is to control the corners. Now, if you think of this as like a square, if I don't want the person to rotate away or towards me, if I put weight onto this corner or this, or let's say these two corners, if I press down on those corners, then it's very difficult for them to lift their shoulders upwards. So the obvious thing is that they will roll towards the point of pressure. Yeah, like if you imagine someone on the ground, you put a hand on their one shoulder and hand on the hip on the same side and just lean into it, very tough for them to roll away from you in that instance, very easy for them to sort of roll towards the point of pressure. So if you pin something to the ground, you should expect that they'll move towards it. Now that's okay, so long as you want them moving towards you. But if you don't want them moving towards you, then you could pin the other corners and then they would have to move away from you. Or because it's a square, you can pin, you know, opposite corners and then they can't move, you know, towards you or away from you, in the same way that you can pin opposite corners up here, oopsie daisy, or opposite corners down here. And that way you'll control them from being able to move forwards and backwards. Now, there are times when you might want your opponent to roll towards you or away from you or do something, in which case you might deliberately release some of the pressure to encourage movement in the direction you like. But for our purposes right now, we're trying to control someone in side control. And so what we're trying to do is control the corners of them, right? And so that's the sort of most simplistic way to understand it. If you can control opposing corners of the square, then you know the directions they can and can't turn. If I control these two corners, my opponent could probably sit up in towards me. If I controlled these two corners, the shoulders, then my opponent could, if I controlled these two corners, then my opponent could bring, you know, their hips up towards me in this direction. So there's benefits and weaknesses to controlling all the different sets of corners, but broadly, I just need you to understand that if you can pin a corner in a particular spot, you're in pretty good nick. Does that all make sense? You can be completely silent and complicit. Excellent, excellent. Okay, so
you cover it well, mate. You cover it very well, and I was sitting here thinking, yeah, I can't really add to that. Good job.
Thanks, thank you. Okay, so now I think the way to then sort of understand how positions within a position function is to understand that if there are myriad ways that I could control the different corners of the person, they all can't be the same position, right? Like if I'm controlling, if I'm controlling these two corners, then that can't be the sort of same position that I would be in if I was controlling, you know, their two shoulders, right? So that's where you come into different positions, like a knee on belly, like a cross face, like a switched base side control, all of those different kind of things. And so what we're going to go over tonight is a couple of different positions, and we're going to sort of watch them play out and look at how they're all side control kind of thematically, but they are very different positions, and they present different strengths and different weaknesses depending on what's going on. Really, the big distinction that I'm going to draw to you right now is you'll see that predominantly like knee on belly, if you imagine this is someone's legs here, that goes out that way. So knee on belly, controls, come here, controls these two corners from the sort of shin riding across the hips. Whereas, good thing I'm an amazing drawer, something like it's going to be a position called Crucifix, where you're going to see the legs are up here, and then there's control potentially at the head, and then they're controlling the arm on the other side. I don't know. hang on. That's not an arm. That's not where arms come from. Good. Okay. So you're going to see something like Crucifix, where now the opponent is being controlled in now the opponent's being controlled in these top couple of corners. I was trying to make that blue. The top couple of corners. This really matters to me now. Up here. So think knee on belly is one position which controls the hips, whereas something like a Crucifix is another position that's up nice and high at the shoulders that controls the shoulder position. Both of them are side control insofar as you're controlling without having to deal with the legs of your opponent, and you haven't yet gone to mount where you're splitting your body across the top of them. That's probably that point done to death. So does anyone have any questions about that before we move on?
It's interesting, you're talking about knee on belly. So when I think about knee on belly, I think about my actual knee as in a sort of an apex of my leg around someone's kind of midsection, mid-torso. Whereas the way you described it just then, it's more of a sort of a cross, instead of sort of a knee putting pressure on a single point, kind of roughly sort of in the center of someone's belly. It's, perhaps with the intention of creating some discomfort so that they push your opponent pushes your knee away and kind of exposes an underhook. The way you described it with your stick man is that the knee on belly is more of a kind of a control where it's, I guess your shin, if you were coming up on the left side, your shin would be kind of anchoring one side of the hip, and the knee would be anchoring the other side. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So sort of like that. That's a toe. That's toes. Yeah, exactly. So there's the shin, there's the foot, there's the knee. That's correct, Dane. So I've drawn and I've sort of talked about knee on belly as a controlling position. You're 100% correct, right? What you can do is drive your knee directly into their belly button, if this is your foot over here and your hips up here somewhere. And that's a lot less controlling, which should be, relatively evident, because you're not putting force on an end of a lever. You're putting it directly over the top of the fulcrum, right? So the knee straight into the belly button, for our purposes, isn't as controlling because the person can pivot their hips either side. Yeah, they're free to rotate either the near side or the far side hip up and down. But what driving the knee into the belly button does is makes it horrifically uncomfortable. And so, as you say, it'll drive a response, which is usually the hand coming to the knee. That feeds you an underhook, and that's what you're after. Yes. Yeah,
so I've only sort of previously thought about knee on belly in terms of that red line sort of application versus the green line, more of a sort of a controlling, controlling the hips through in my mind, kind of the intent of the knee on belly is to cause that discomfort, to open up a possibility, or like an underhook versus a control the hips kind of intention.
Yeah.
Also, Dane, you're 100% correct. Tristan's 100% correct. The knee can be where you said it was, can be across the hip, controlling both sides. I've had someone in a competition do a knee on my rib cage up across my pec, and that was uncomfortable. And I've even had some twat in Orange do a knee across my neck. So he went knee to chest and then knee onto my head. And that's, I'd say it's illegal. I'm not sure, but they didn't disqualify him. So I think for us, knee across hip, knee on the middle, that's all good. And it's all, it's comfortable rolling. and then the knee can go up a bit higher, but you know, you're starting to enter territory where you're being I think you're being not a good training partner.
Yeah.
And I guess
Yeah,
like I'm just trying to think back to like the basic. It's one of like it's like the third tip white belt or something, and it's like a knee right escape, and it's the knee right escape, assuming the person is doing the red line, so they're in the center, and it's that sort of hip escape away with sort of basically thrusting the knee kind of off your chest with the palm of your hand. But obviously that same escape would not work if they're going with the green kind of application.
Yeah, that's correct. And it won't work predominantly because if your foot is in that green configuration, what you're able to do is actually use the sort of oh man, got me again. Use the insole of your foot through here to sort of apply pressure crossways and actually turn their hip away. So you're actually able to put like a bit of a torsional force through the hip, and it becomes really, really hard to actually turn like back in towards the person.
Yeah, we talked about this on Monday, Tristan. That was 100%. Yeah. Royal knee roll. Yeah,
good.
Good.
Making sense. That's a really good point there. And so for there is other positions that you could use within side control, and I guess that's another subset of the position where you would be going there with the understanding you're sacrificing a degree of control because you're probably going to trigger a very predictable response. And so you're sacrificing control for some other reason, trying to open up movement. And certainly shifting your knee to the middle of the belly, you're doing that because you're trying to generate movement out of the position. You're trying to generate an underhook and pull them onto their side. So you're losing control for movement for transition. Cool. Excellent. Well done. Love all that. All right. What we're going to do is try this again. I think I'm getting better at, well, I don't want to jinx it. I want to say that now. Okay. My UFC Fight Pass subscription runs out on the 10th of September. So this may or may not be the last to second last time that we can use live footage off the UFC. We'll see how we do. Okay. What I've got here.
It's $9. Let me know if you need me to pass the hat around.
It's pretty hard times here in the Hedger household. We can't afford that. Nah.
Hey, Tristan, I think Redback can do that for you, buddy.
Oh, no, I'll probably renew it. I renew it and then I'm like, okay, we don't do that anymore, and I cancel it, and then I end up using it heaps.
Talk about it offline and just have.
Thank you. Okay, let's stay on focus. I don't want to turn this into my plea.
Never go fund me.
Guys, what I'm offering is 3 chances of rewards depending on the amount of money you pay my Fight Pass for. Okay, cool. So sorry, really quickly, what we're looking at here is Khabib Nurmagomedov. Oh no, what is using my pen and I can't. The drawing's about to get less impressive now. So we're looking at Khabib Nurmagomedov, who is the chap on top here, and he has the red gloves on, the red tape on his gloves, versus a guy called Michael Johnson, who is underneath in the blue gloves. There's a pretty one-sided fight that occurred a few years ago, and I've actually used it a couple of times because it's the simplest example of Khabib's ground control, because it basically plays out the same through 3 rounds where there's a bit of work on the feet. Khabib manages to get the fight to the ground and then has something like 3 minutes of the 5 just working on the ground and just being an exceptionally smothering top player. So what I want you to see here really, really fast is if we just track back a teeny tiny little bit. So takedown, which is fancy and nice and fully approved, just sort of ripped him down there. Okay, you can see that Khabib's made it past, let's see if I can use my similar colors here. Khabib's made it past the line of Johnson's hips. So there's Johnson's hips. You can see he's probably trying to get his knee in somewhere, but he would have been able to block that. Let me get rid of these ones. And so he's working himself into side control. Okay, what you can see here is Johnson's trying to turn in, right? He's trying to turn himself inwards so that he's able to probably like either get to his knees or get his guard back in place. So one of those two things. The thing initially that is stopping Johnson from being able to do that, is this underhook here. So you can see this quite shallow underhook from Nurmagomedov. We'll just call him Khabib, so I don't get his name wrong every time. And you're going to see that he turns that into a much, much deeper underhook. And then what you're probably seeing, or what you are seeing as a result of the hips kind of coming up here, is Khabib's now trying to use his knee over on this side of him to build into a crucifix. So if you think back to my little stick figure with how you can control the shoulders, or you can control the hips, or you can control one shoulder, one hip, or some variation of all those things, you can see that moments ago, clang, you can see, so he's controlling the top shoulder here. Let me get rid of my annotation because it's not helping us. He's controlling the top shoulder here, and then see how Khabib drops his hip into here. So there's Khabib's hip going in there. So one shoulder controlled with this underhook over here. And then he's actually starting to control this hip by dropping his own hips into the position. And you can see he's going to add a little bit of pressure. So he stops, he sort of uses his hip there to flatten Johnson out. And now that he's flat, you can see he starts to work up towards the head. Now, some of the things that I didn't scribble on the pad, because we sort of, I think the point of being fairly thrashed out, was one way you can also control the shoulders and the hips is to control the head. And we're going to see a bunch of that now, right? If you cross face the head and make them look away, it's really hard for them to turn. So like if you imagine you're laying on your back and you look all the way to the left, it's really hard to then roll your body all the way to the right. It just doesn't work because your neck doesn't allow you to do that. Okay, so it's going to be a changing camera angle, I think, in a second. Cool. So you can see that Khabib's trying to build a crucifix here. So a crucifix we'll see in a second, but it's controlling one side of the shoulders with your hands, with the underhook, and then the other side of the shoulders with your hips and your knees and your legs, where you sort of get their arms stuck between your legs. So you see he's trying to work for it here. And then you can see Khabib actually switches there for a second, sort of bumps his hip back. Sorry, I'm rolling forwards and backwards. Bumps his hip back to control the hip for a second, and then steps over, or it keeps trying to step over into the crucifix. Okay, I think the camera angle changes here in a second. This is like the best camera angle of the entire fight, because you can see here, you can see my little box that I drew for you. You can see Michael Johnson there is a box like this, hips, shoulders. So I told you the drawings were going to get less good as I had to use my thing. And then you can see where Khabib is trying to put his effort. So right now, he's trying to run a line across the top of Johnson's shoulders. You see this little knee down here, or his knee down here, is sort of, we'll call it like monitoring that hip to make sure he knows what's going on down there and to give him a point of contact. But very much the focus is up at the shoulders. All right. And so we can watch this play out. And what you're seeing is Khabib's left hand is fighting Johnson's, right wrist. And he's trying to force his wrist down. You're going to see he's going to try to build into the crucifix. So you can kind of see, Johnson's wise to what's happening here. And you can see he's doing his best to stop his hand from getting pushed out into the crucifix. Some of these annotations are getting a bit sus. Okay, perfect. Okay, so this is the crucifix. Nice. And that's probably a great shot of it there. You see how there are a couple of things going on here. The first and most important in terms of understanding side control and why this position is so dominant isn't because Johnson's arms are separated, but it's because Khabib has been able to place a control point directly over the top of both of Johnson's shoulders. The second thing that's going on is he's been able to isolate both of his elbows away from his body. Yeah, so shoulders and elbows. If you think in terms of like ways to control people, you want that underhooked space, right? You want that limb separated from the trunk. And so Khabib has now managed to put an underhook into both of Johnson's armpits. Just add a little bit of red here. And so he's able to keep the limbs separated as well as control those two shoulder points. So it's very difficult for Johnson to get his elbows back to try and rotate and get his shoulders moving, but also he can't move his shoulders at any point because of the controls. So Crucifix is a deeply controlling position, or I should say a very controlling position. And it's a very controlling position in the same way that knee on belly, pardon me, in the same way that knee on belly, if you were to do it down here, would control those two corners. Get rid of all of my drawings. Okay, so because it's mixed martial arts and you're allowed to punch people in the face, the logical thing to do here is not to look for a submission, but just punch your opponent in the face a whole bunch of times, boom, until they're able to get themselves out, right? So Johnson is bridging and moving. So do you remember moments earlier I told you, hey, every position has strengths and every position has weaknesses. The weakness of the crucifix, or controlling, both of those shoulders, is that your opponent's hips are free to move. And so what you can see, if I just roll this back a tiny bit here, what you can see here is Johnson is going to move around and buck his hips, and he's going to be able to try and generate some space and get out. And what you probably, or maybe you didn't miss, you probably didn't miss because you're all smart people, but see how Khabib's really high, and then Johnson uses his kind of elbows and hands and shuffles his hips up. So you can see how, like, there's his belly button quite exposed, and then he shuffles Khabib down, gets him just a little bit lower on the hips, and then bridges. And by getting him just that little bit lower, he's able to generate force out of his hips. Whereas when Khabib's up much higher, like up around here, a bridge wouldn't affect him at all. Is that making sense? Cool. All right. So,
Hey, Tristan. So
yeah.
So I understand that this crucifix position is very controlling and would be a good one to get into.
Yes.
But I know that when I was a white belt, and I was just basically trying to maintain side control, there was always that reminder not to go too far across their center line, because once you go beyond their center line, then they can very easily sweep you. But it looks like in order to get Michael Johnson's right arm kind of triangled like that to set up the crucifix, Khabib's needing to go well beyond that Michael Johnson's midline. Yeah. And is the only thing that's stopping him from being swept there that he's posting with his head?
That's a really good question, mate. So a couple of things are happening. The first is, because Khabib's been able to get high onto his hips, onto his shoulders, a lot of the power of the rotation is taken out. So because he's in the crucifix position with the elbows split away from the trunk and the shoulders pinned to the ground, it's very difficult for Johnson to make enough power to rotate him off his base. You're absolutely correct. His head over here is functioning as a post. And so if you actually look at sort of Khabib's base, it's a knee, and it's his head over here. So he's actually got this very, very large triangle, and his base extends beyond the sort of margins of Johnson, right? The angles are a little bit shoddy on this, but when you're thinking in terms of, hey, don't cross the center line, it's more to do with, if this is the sort of borders of Johnson here, if you committed yourself across a little bit, but your base was still kind of committed here. So if you just had an underhook, you didn't have the rest of him over this side. If he just had his arm here, then there wouldn't be any of this base stopping that rotation off to the opposite side. So you're absolutely correct. The reason he's, let's say, broken that heuristic, broken that rule, is because he's been able to commit much more of himself across. Now, when you're first starting out, obviously, it's much easier to keep you safe from yourself by saying, hey, don't cross the center line with lots of yourself, because you don't know how to do a crucifix yet. You're still learning how to do like a basic side control position. So by keeping you, all on the near side of your opponent, you can kind of protect yourself from committing over there. But as you want to develop control through more and more positions, like sub positions within side control, that's when we start to have to break those rules about just the standard crossface and underhook. And we have to now go, okay, we can commit to the opposite side, but in doing that, yes, we need to know there are some risks of being rolled. And what you're probably about to see in this next little bit, is Nurmagomedov, Khabib, dealing with those rules as he goes position to position. So, sorry, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thanks.
Oh, cool. No problems.
So
So
I think in the past I would have been like, you know, had I seen this, I'd go, look, I'd be in side control and I'd go, oh, I wouldn't mind having to go at a crucifix, but I'd be like, to do so would require me to go well beyond the midline, the belly button north line, which would essentially put me at risk of being swept. So I'd probably not take the chance. But knowing that if I sort of commit my weight, like he's doing on the screen, I'd probably be safe to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. So, every position has strengths and weaknesses. You need to know that when you're going to a crucifix, you need to know the things that make it good and the things that make it bad. And so the rule of don't cross the center line really only applies to that sort of standard side control, the cross-face underhook, that kind of side control. As you start to go to some of the other positions, those rules change.
Yeah, thanks.
Sweet. Good question. Okay, here we go. So let this play a tiny little bit here for a second. Okay, so you're going to see Johnson's able to bridge in a sec and get his wrist out. Cool. And this is probably a really nice time to actually, I guess, follow on from your question, Dane. So you can see here, clank there. So you can see Khabib really committed to both sides of Johnson. And then as soon as Johnson starts to get his arms out, see how Khabib is on his bike and immediately sucking himself back to the near side. And now he's following your rule again. Yeah, like he's following that rule of there's the center line of Johnson. The vast majority of Khabib is now back on the safe side of the river because the situation's changed. Johnson's gone from being stuck in a crucifix to now having, in fact, like this sort of double underhooking position. And so Khabib needs to switch his position. He's still effectively in side control, but now he needs to go to another one of those sub positions to try and keep the whole thing, under control. All right. So now what you're going to see is here, can you see that Khabib has lost? Oh, where am I hiding that? Sorry. Okay. Can you see that Khabib has lost the far side underhook? So one of the rules we'll probably always tell you is, hey, get a far side underhook. You need a far side underhook. So that's the far side. You need the underhook under there because it stops from Johnson from being able to move around. Khabib's lost that, right? So what his next transition is going to do is to deal with that. And so I'm going to run back a tiny bit. We'll hit play, and I'm going to ask you sort of what you see that he does. So he's lost the far side underhook, and now he's built a new position. Okay, what's changed? What's Khabib gone and gotten as a result of losing the far side? So who can answer me that?
As in he no longer has an underhook on the.
So he doesn't have on Johnson doesn't have that left underhook. So on Johnson's left arm, he no longer has that. So what's he gone to now? What's he gone and gotten to deal with that?
But hasn't he gone to a crossface with Khabib's left hand?
Yeah, to some extent. Yeah, correct. Yeah, he does. And you can see what his right arm is doing. So remember I said that you need to separate a limb from a trunk, yeah? And so over here, he's done that with this arm. So now Khabib, it's probably a little hard to see here, sorry, but now Khabib's arm is actually getting an underhook, sort of a near-sided underhook on Johnson's leg. And so he's been able to control Johnson's trunk movement with that underhook at the leg. So he's lost the underhook at the arm and he's gone and gotten one down at the leg. So he's following the rule, hey, I need to control limbs from trunk, but he's lost the arm. So now he's gone down to the leg. That sort of, hopefully that's making sense. Okay, cool. So now we're going to see he's going to use that position. And then as soon as he's gotten control, kind of gotten him flat, now watch what his right arm does. So hang on, I'm going to run this back through a tiny bit, sorry. So loses his crucifix, goes and gets control of the hip with that right underhook, goes and gets himself a crossface with his left hand. And then as soon as that crossface is in place, that right arm comes out and goes and gets the far side underhook again, yeah? Builds himself directly back into crossface and underhook, that kind of classic side control position. And the thing about this position, children trying to request things. The thing about this position is it gives you really good control here, pretty good control here and some control over here. So you're sort of getting, 2 to 3 corners of the box is what you're able to pull off. So it's a nice kind of stable, getting as many of the corners under control as I can kind of a position. Cool. Nice. And that's the reason that we wanted to use this clip to link it into what Richie taught us last on Monday. Watch what his right knee does. So he's got his crossface and his underhook. Sorry, I'm jumping all over. That's a bit hard for you to watch. And he goes straight to a knee on belly right there. So see now he's working his knee on belly. He's using that to try and land some damage. So that the benefit of a knee on belly in this situation is he's able to posture up. So when you're sort of laying flat on someone, you can only kind of arm punch. Yeah, you can generate power out of the elbow and a little bit out of the shoulder, but you don't have like a nice big long kinetic chain. He doesn't really want to go for a like a no-gi baseball choke, like Rich showed as an option. It's, in this context, probably a very low percentage option and giving up a lot of control. So what you can see is he goes to knee on belly so that he can try to land some bigger shots. And you see immediately the problem with doing that is he loses a lot of the controls. So back to what Dane sort of talked to us about at the start, as soon as you put that knee into the belly, which it is bam right there. So you can see he's kind of got his knee into his belly. And then he comes up. You can see Habib basically sacrifices all of his controls right about here. Yeah. So he's gone to that kind of that position that Trav experienced up in orange, where basically riding him with both knees, but he's also got a lot of himself lifted up off the top of Johnson. And so his controls have all disappeared. And so he's gone from sort of a control focused position, and he's opened it up to try to give himself the ability to land some shots. There he goes, trying to land shots. And you can see as immediately Johnson does the right thing and rolls himself in to try and get out. And what he's been able to do in that transition is trap Habib into half guard. We won't go over any of that specifically, but Habib's gone from being past the legs to having a really nice side control position, working those sort of subsets of the position within side control. And then as he's opened up and lost his control, he's been punished by being sucked back into half guard. Yeah, there you go. And so I don't think too much else happens for the rest of this round that I need you to see. Yeah. We've talked previously about the fact that in mixed martial arts at the moment, it's very, very common to not go to mount, but to use side control as half guard top as a really controlling position, because you're able to stop the person from turtling. And so I guess not really in the context of what we've just talked about, but that escape out of knee on belly that you'll see here in 2 seconds. So, but he turns in, Habib loses it. He actually feeds his own leg into half guard so that Johnson can't continue to roll up on top of him. And that locks him into the position for the rest of the round. Bad times, don't get punched in the face too much. It's bad for you. Okay, we're heading off to the second round now. Habib's going to get guillotined here. Try to get guillotined. Okay, passing and boom. That's what we want to look at. Just a moment, sorry. Sorry, just getting requests from my children. Damn it, you gotta close it. We'll be fine. Okay, so what I want you to see here, sorry about that. What I want you to see here is Habib's going to use like a knee cut to come through. So we'll just roll back a tiny bit. See, he's knee cutting there. You can see he's just done that knee cut pass, and then he's settling himself into side control. So we'll just let this work through a tiny bit. You see he goes directly into Crucifix. So nice, smooth transition. Just a moment, sorry. Nice, smooth transition, but let's just have a look at the sort of the key points that make it work, right? So it looks really, really fast, and you look at it and would think, oh, okay, that he just moved quickly and that's why that worked. But what I want you to see is the points of control that he's used to make that an effective transition. So slides his knee through on the knee cut. And you can see as his knee comes through here, see how his foot, we're looking at Habib's right foot right now. So looking at this and this. This is the knee cut. It's coming through and it's going into that space, like into Johnson's pocket. Yeah, he's trying to pass the legs and get into that bottom of the square where he can control the hip. So you can see it comes through on the pass. He turns it inwards and then starts to push with his knee to flatten Johnson out. So he's used that right knee to cut and then control that near side hip. Now, as he's done that as well, as he's kind of swiveled his right foot, what we're not seeing here is he's also cut his left knee over the top of Johnson's arm. And it's very difficult for you to see, but this is Johnson's fingers popping out the back here as he's kind of let his arm fire through. So he's cut his right knee over the top of his leg, and then he's cut his left knee over the top of his arm, all on the same side. And so what that ends up looking like is as he settles in, clank, he settles directly into that crucifix position. Now that transitional stuff that's occurred on the far side, sorry, on the near side, as we've just been talking about, it all happens and it's all able to occur because Khabib has an underhook over here. So he's come through on the knee cut with an underhook. So he's got his right arm underhooking. That gives him control. That means he can use his right knee to cut, block the space, and then use his left knee to come over the top of the arm and settle into his crucifix position, just like that. I hope that made sense as I talked through it. All righty.
Tristan.
Yeah, great.
With Johnson there, just as Khabib was doing the knee cut, Johnson nearly had his knee in between the two of them.
Yeah.
And then it looks like he got distracted by the arm crucifix business. So right there, yeah. So is that what's happened? Is it because of the undercut, or is it because of the arm that he's gotten this dilemma that we keep talking about, and he's decided to deal with that instead of trying to keep the knee in?
That's a really, really good question, Greg. So what I think is happening here is a couple of factors are playing the role. I don't think he's decided to let his knee out, as in this right knee. That's kind of the last part of his guard. So he hasn't consciously decided to let that pop out, I don't think. I think what has happened is the points of control around the rest of his body have meant that he can't keep his hip turned on its side. So he can't keep that right pocket down, which gives him the movement or the range to get that knee into position. He kind of gets forced onto his back, and that makes his knee pop out. So if we go nice and slow here, Khabib sort of, you can see he's kind of like forcing his shoulder down. So you can see that there's a stack of force there. And cool, good. So that process of driving that shoulder down has meant that it's going to flatten out Johnson's hips like that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense when you talk that bit through now.
Cool. Excellent. Yeah. Fantastic. So you were 100% correct. It makes sense that Johnson would work to keep that knee in place because it gives him a shield to work off. Yeah. But because of the points of control that we've talked, because of his ability to pin those to the ground and control the shoulders, it makes the hips have to turn, and it takes that kind of mechanically advantageous position away from him. It means his knee has to pop out. He's also spent 3 minutes being punched in the face in the last round, so he's probably a bit like, this again. Okay, let's have a bit of a watch. Not too much punching in the face. Oh, there's lots of punching in the face. Okay. Cool. Okay. This is a really, really interesting thing that you may or may not find interesting. There's a position called a reverse triangle. So this is probably more for Trav's benefit than anything else. But what's interesting here is you can see Johnson's face is kind of sneaking out here, again with the annotations, Tristan. Johnson's face is kind of sneaking out here. He's trying to get himself underneath this leg of Khabib's and kind of sneak his way out the back door. What Khabib does is sort of let him go a little bit, but uses this knee here to block the armpit. So Johnson's able to kind of squeeze his head partially out of the spot, but then kind of runs into his own arm. And then Khabib holds him there long enough to just punch him in the face a whole bunch of times and then encourage Johnson to bring himself back out. So Johnson's kind of trying to follow one route of escape out of the crucifix. But because Habib's able to just punch him in the face as he goes that way, he's able to stop him from going there. What that would probably lead to in a jiu-jitsu context would be a reverse triangle. Yeah, like you could feed them into the crucifix, give them the space to escape the head, and then look to go to the reverse triangle.
Yeah, massively. And I've been watching that thinking that's where he would go to, but obviously he's not. But, you know, the left leg will go across, that left foot goes across to the right knee, and then he forms that triangle. But he hasn't quite got the head, has he? No, he hasn't quite got the head.
So he kind of pops out. And then so that would be the spot where, like, you would be thinking, hey, I'll force the knee in. And cool. Yeah, perfect.
Is that the most common transition from a crucifix? Is it to it like a head-arm triangle?
As into a reverse triangle like this. I'd say
I guess I'm sort of like I'm looking at like Khabib's obviously using the crucifix as something that sort of you can basically sort of control him and basically just hit him, just punch him repeatedly. But obviously in a BJJ environment, if what's the most common sort of go-to from a crucifix position?
So in the gi, it's probably just like a short choke, so like half of a cross collar choke. In no gi, it might be something like going to this, or it's probably attacking the underhook. So in this instance, it would be using Johnson's left arm, like attacking his left arm. So you'd use it to attack the left arm for like a Kimura or something like that, which I can show you in a minute. Yeah.
Hey, Dane, also adding to that, it depends on what you do. Like I'm seeing a triangle, right? Because I've been doing lots of these, and you know, I can see that he's left leg under the head over to the right knee. But you might be, as Tristan said, you might be, you know, oh, I've got another, you know, you go somewhere else. I think your size, you would punch your knee. You got strong legs. I think you should be trying for a triangle here, and you know that's what you should be trying to do. I think a triangle there is really cool.
I think I've always found that like triangles seem to kind of lend themselves to the tall, kind of wiry, long-legged folks. So I usually have a lot of success with triangles. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I agree. You're now all right. Harry's got long legs. I've got long legs. Jarrah has long legs, right? I haven't always been a triangle person. And Higan Machado once said to me, why no triangle? You know, in not Korean, in Brazilian, like, you know, and I'm like, I don't know, like it's just not something I did. Focus on it now. I think even shorter leg people should still be doing triangles because they're tighter. Us long-legged guys, we can pull them from angles, but shorter leg people can pull tight triangles. So I'm kind of, you know, if someone like Chris here, if Chris was to get a short triangle here, it's going to work beautiful. You know, he's going to tie this person up. So yeah, you're right. Go for him, mate. That's what I reckon.
When you say if it's for someone who maybe doesn't want to go for a triangle, but they find themselves in that crucifix position, is it the case that because you've gone through the crucifix, you've isolated, in this case, your opponent's right arm, that means you can basically go two arms on one arm in terms of the far side arm?
Yep, that's correct.
Yeah. And what do you think you can do? If you've isolated his other limb, you've got weight on his sort of shoulder girdle, as you know, if Tristan went back to that box, you could do a Kimura, couldn't you? Like you can do a cutting arm bar, you know, because you've got, you know what I mean? You've really got a lot of attacks on that far side arm, as you pointed out.
So this is the end of the fight where exactly what we've just discussed plays out. So you can see that Johnson's back into that crucifix position with his, you know, it's not as developed as we've just looked at it, but you can see both arms are sort of isolated, and you can see here Khabib's going to use it to go slightly to the north-south and then get onto the arm and start to attack the shoulder. And we don't need to watch that. So can you see that how he's used that crucifix position what is effectively the crucifix position to then go use the fact that he has what is in effect 2 free arms to attack that far arm. So that's one good option. And then the other one would obviously be more coming from where we were just looking. Where are we? Where 3 minutes and 2 seconds it was. Where it's kind of more like he's looking for that that inverted triangle position there. Cool. All right, almost out of time. So I think that's about all I wanted to show you. There's just one little transition that is just a really nice knee on belly demonstration. And I wanted to show it to you. And I think it's there. Okay, nice. That's it. We're just going to watch it through very quickly so you can sort of have a sense of what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's probably the end of it. Okay, nice. What this little transition here I think shows very nicely is one of the benefits of knee on belly is you're sort of up and you're a tiny bit more mobile. So you're still achieving a lot of those control points on the hip, but what you're able to do is also sort of follow the person a little bit. So you can see here, Johnson starts to, he gets his heels into the ground, and he doesn't have, you can't really see this very well, but he doesn't have this underhook really well pinned in. He doesn't have his head anymore. So the head control's gone, the underhook's gone. And in fact, Habib's control is now down at the hips. So you can see this point, this elbow here, and then the knee on the opposite side would be doing the same thing. He's actually now trying to control those two corners down at the hips rather than up at the shoulders here. So that the left arm of Habib is up at the head, but you can see he's committed himself to controlling the shoulders. There's a bunch of reasons for that, which we could look at, but for now, that's just what the position's gotten itself into. And so he's here. What that means though is Johnson's now able to sort of start to frame and move a little bit. And you can see he's getting his elbows in and starting to get his elbows in between himself and Habib. And as he's able to lift Habib's chest up off him, now with his arms in between himself and Habib, it's really hard for Habib to kind of come and control the shoulders, right? Like if I can get my elbows in between you and me, then it's very hard for you to come chest to chest with me. But what that does do is it opens up a heap of space, and very difficult to see potentially here. But Habib's
that's
knee
really
riding,
interesting, isn't it?
yeah,
Because you mentioned it before and I mentioned it. He's got up on his knees exactly. I must have rolled an MMA guy, and that's exactly what he did to me. And I was like, oh, this is a bit uncool. But yeah, there you go. He didn't strike me, thank God. Although, no, he did actually strike me with his elbow, and I had a bloody eye. But that's exactly it. Yeah.
So yeah, he's on that neck near. It was interesting when you said that at the start. I was like, no, this is going to be good because I've got a photo of that coming up. So he's knee right in the neck, but also then you can see, watch his sort of right foot in the background there. You can see it disappears up and it goes into knee on belly. And then that's probably the best photo of it. There we go. It's nice. So you can see. Oh no, sorry. Go try.
Oh, sorry, mate. I just think, I don't want to. I just don't want to move on from that for a second. I don't know if it's legal or not. I think it's still legal. You can go up for the knee ride, right, on the neck, and then you grab a half Nelson grip, teacup grip around the neck, fall back into a bow and arrow, like if you're in gi.
I do that. I think, like I sort of step my shin behind the neck. But yeah,
not on it. Yeah, like he was still on it, I think. But yeah.
I'm not trying to knee right anyone's throat.
Yeah, but I think people do. No, I think it's legal. I actually think you can knee ride a bit, and then you're just basically choking them with your shin and you're grabbing their neck. Anyway, that's something else. All right, cool.
No one knee ride my throat. That's the rules. Good. We agree. Okay, so what you can see here is Johnson starting to hang on, sorry. Johnson's starting to kind of hip escape away. and the knee ride is letting Habib control him down at the hips. So you can see, yeah, there's action happening up at Johnson's face and shoulders, but the control is coming from that knee ride down at the hips. But then what you see very quickly is Habib transitions back into that crucifix control and is trying to settle himself back onto the shoulders. So back onto the shoulders is as far away from the legs and the hips and everything where all the power is. And you can kind of come chest to chest and you can get that nice solid controlling position. You can see that the risk of being sort of focused on that hip control and that knee ride is Johnson's able to roll himself in. You can see Habib's gone back to controlling the hip, and now he's trying to get back onto the shoulders. And there's just transition to a bunch of other positions at that point. I'm probably going to leave it there because I've just hit 7, so I don't want to run us too late. There's some other example stuff in there, so if you want me to sort of carry on with it next week, I certainly can. Otherwise, I'll move on to the next subject. But probably the things I wanted to demonstrate to you tonight was just give you an idea of how knee ride fits into like the context of all the side control sub positions, and give you a chance to see the movement of someone underneath side control and how the person on top is moving from sort of sub position to sub position to deal with that, and the reasons why they would favor certain positions at certain points in the roll, fight, whatever you want to call it. Sweet. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I
Trav?
do.
Yeah, go.
Yeah, so just this is one I'm kind of in the dark here. I'm outside. Can you see me?
Yeah.
If I go, yeah, whatever, doesn't matter. All right, so there are some silver linings in this process, right? So we've accepted this is what it is, and we're doing this. And then I was talking to Richie today because I was like, I'm really enjoying these fight reviews, bout reviews, and they're both different. They're both awesome. And then I was thinking from a learning point of view for everyone. And then I was thinking the senior students, the ones that can do it, should do it. Then I was thinking how I've explained that in my head, the evolution of the syllabus has changed, right? And then I was saying to Richie what I expect from a brown belt. Now I want to say to everyone here is that, so Dane and Greg and family, and it's really early days for Greg and family, but I would like to see, so for instance, the guard game, and you come up with your own guard game and you add to it, and you have maintaining, regaining, upgrading, and submissions, and you put it together in your own package. So for Dane,
What a convenient time to drop out.
I think he's just frozen. I was wondering if that was just at my end. Oh, he's back.
Oh, sorry. How much did you miss?
You said for Dane, and then we lost the rest of it.
Oh, for Dane. Sorry. For Dane, so I wanted to see close guard, complete game, maintaining, retaining, regaining, upgrading, submissions, and then half guard exactly the same, and then deep half guard exactly the same, and then hooks, and then De La Riva, right? And this is on blue belt. And then I was saying to Richie, there's no reason why, Richie, you can't do the same. And then you film it, you show me, you come and you do it. It's a study. We are applying an academic rigor to this. We're saying to people, yeah, don't regurgitate what Trav said. Go and, as John Will has said numerous times, write down in the middle of the board, close guard. Then you go, oh, hang on, submissions. And then you go upgrades. And I know I don't want to take away from what Tristan, what the lesson was about today, but I just want everyone to know that's where we're heading, so that I know that a purple belt's games top control, bottom control, and they're going to have so much more than a blue belt, and a blue belt's going to have so much more than a white belt. And Richie and Tristan, who are certainly way down this path, have so much more than others, and so that there is this depth and this there's a broadness and a depth. And did I have it? Probably not. Am I getting it now? Most definitely. So that's what we're going to do in the system. Thanks for listening to me.
Welcome, mate.
Did you hear me? Yeah, good.
Kylie, Ben, or Chelsea, do any of you have any questions?
No, none from us. It was quite good to watch. Hopefully we'll be able to put it into practice soon.
You just knee right each other. You're the
That's right.
luckiest family so far in this whole situation.
I think have you guys got your mats? Have they turned up or
Yeah, they arrived yesterday.
Ooh.
gold dust?
Just have to move furniture out each time we need to use them.
No, you don't need that furniture. That can get out of the way. You just need those mats.
I would love to do a clip in my house where I've matted out the whole house and then it's just breakfast and you roll and fight and then you have your breakfast and then just as a sort of skit for humour. The only problem is I can't be bothered getting rid of all the furniture, but you guys, someone could do it and it'd be very funny.
The mats on my house are sometimes used as a dining room / sleeping area / television area. They get used for everything. Honestly, it's the most convenient, versatile aspect of having a matted area in your house. Like you do anything here, it's no risk. It's great.
Yeah. Good on you. Hey, mate, that was really good tonight. Really appreciate it. Actually, it's like I think I said this on Monday. Is last year kind of got overwhelmed when I look back at that, and I don't want to admit this. It was kind of for me. And then afterwards, it took me ages to recover from the lockdown because I don't know why. Whereas this one, I've really embraced it, and I feel that this is contributing to it. So yeah, look, I got a lot out of it, and I know others would be getting a lot out of it. I don't know how many people are watching them later or whatever, but you know, I can't help it if they're not watching. I can't